everybody. Welcome to this week's video about building a better relationship with money, and I'm going to walk you through my end of the month money routine. If you are somebody who has struggled with your finances, have had lots of ups and downs with your finances, or maybe you are somebody that has multiple income streams, this video is for you. Me and my friend who run a blog called Living Lifestyle, we shared an article a couple months ago about building out a healthier relationship with money. And so I wanted to elaborate a little bit further on that topic here on YouTube. So a little bit of quick context. I am somebody who is a creative entrepreneur. I am a UGC creator, so I do content creation. I run this YouTube channel. I am a producer at a production company, and I also have a small candle business along with a real estate property. So I do have multiple streams of income, and I've had lots of ups and downs in my business and in my personal finances over the years, just with job uncertainty, big changes, moves, the realities of starting a small business, especially a product-based business. So lots of ups and downs in terms of money that I can speak to. And so I thought I would be a good person to be able to share sort of my experience with how I got a more positive relationship with money over the years, and how I worked myself out of debt, and how I track my finances every month so that I set myself up for success all year long, and how I'm able to save with all of the expenses that I have, because I do have a lot of expenses. So if you're curious, first part of the video is going to be my end of the month money routine. If that's what you're curious to see, I'll show you the template that I use for my successful money saving tips every month, how I track everything. That's part one of this video. And then part two is going to be my tips on how to build a better relationship to money. So if you don't want to watch the tracking, skip ahead. I've linked the chapters down below, and let's not waste any time. Let's dive right in. Thank you for being here. Okay, so I've got my budget template open here if you want to follow along on the screen. I am going to showcase a new month, so I will input numbers as we go so you can fully see how I do this. Now, I am somebody who has been tracking my spending since I was in high school. I did take some time off in my 20s when I started making a lot more money, and I didn't feel like I had the time to track. So I did have a little hiatus, but I've gotten back into it in the last 5 years, and I think it is the number one thing that has helped me save money, pay off debt, and stay on track every month. So I highly recommend it. This is a template that we bought, me and my business partner bought on Etsy, but I really want to make our own. I want to make one specifically for our lifestyle account, Living Lifestyle, and sell these because both of us love tracking our spending. And so stay tuned for that. It's just something we have as a long-term goal. Anyways, so you'll see here, this is November. What I do at the start of every month is I will go in and I will put in what I'm going to be making for the month. So I'm not going to put in all my exact numbers, but because that's obviously a personal thing, but I will show you around approximate numbers just so you get a sense of what I do. So expected salary, let's say that's $4,500 a month. You know, is there any other things that might be coming in, like a bonus or anything from my business? Typically, I don't pay myself from my business just because my business expenses cover my expenses. The government or gifts, let's say I get $100 from gifts or a reimbursement from somebody. Sinking funds is if you take money out of your savings and bring it into your checkings account. Let's say I want to go somewhere or shop for Christmas or something, $250. So that will basically then populate at the top under budget, total income, and then your actual. So as you get paid, you put those numbers in, and I personally do get salary every month. So my numbers are not going to fluctuate unless, of course, you know, your gifts and reimbursements are different or your sinking funds amount are different. But for today's exercise, let's pretend that everything's the same. So you populate your income. If you are a freelancer, your income might be different every month. I have a different budgeting platform for my freelancing work, but I think for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to show you this one today because I do have a salary job and I do freelance work. So I do keep them separate because they're in separate bank accounts, but this is just specifically for my salary income. And I think this is like the majority of most people probably have this sort of setup. But you could also do it if you are a freelancer of like, what do you think you're going to be making this month? And you just do it for every month based on your what you think will be coming in, basically. So then you go through your expenses. That's the next part. And this is where like the actual budgeting of it comes in. So I have separated it between my needs and my wants, my savings, my debt, And then there's a section for subscriptions and memberships, but I just put that all under the needs and the wants category so that I literally only have 4 categories that I have to look at every month. So your needs are things that are non-negotiable, that you need to pay every month, that aren't really going to fluctuate, and you need them because you need to eat and you need a roof over your head. So let's say my mortgage budget, for example, is $19.50 a month. Utilities might be $200. So that's anything from power to hydro to heating, water, whatever that may be for you. Groceries, $550 a month. Bank fees, so I pay for my checking account, just a slight amount. I think it's like $16.95 every month. And then any interest on debt that may acquire, let's say it's $100, and any house supplies. So that could be cleaning supplies, toilet paper, paper towels. So let's say $50, for example. So I go through my needs first. Then I move over to my wants. So again, you're budgeting. So what do you think that you are going to spend every month? And by November, you should have an idea of like what you spend every month because you've been doing it for a while. But if this is the first time you're doing it, let's say you start it next month or you start it in January, perhaps take a look at your bank account to see sort of what you've spent or just ballpark it. And then you can reevaluate at the end of the month and then readjust. So coffee shops, I do spend too much on coffee shops, but it is a form of pure joy for me. So say $125. I also work at coffee shops sometimes, so it's like an office fee. Dining out, let's say I spend $175 a month. That's anything from going out for pizza or takeout at A&W or even, I don't know, just any food out of the house is like how I would factor that in. Any medical bills. I don't really have any medical bills, so I'll leave that blank, but going out for a drink, so whether or not it's a non-alcoholic or an alcoholic option, but like literally just having a drink instead of a meal, I like to separate them personally. So let's say that's $50. Shopping is anything from like shoes, clothes, anything more physical that you buy, like a purse or something, jewelry, let's say that's $150. Beauty supplies is, I would factor that in as like shampoo, makeup, anything like beauty wise. So let's say that's $75. Beauty and self-care for me is like getting your nails done, getting a facial, anything that's like, or a pedicure, you know, like that would be beauty and self-care. I don't really do much anymore because I can't afford it. Fitness, I do have a gym membership, so I think that's like $75 a month. Supplements varies because some months I buy more than others, but I think like electrolytes I have on a subscription. IM8 is something that I buy like every other month. My naturopath has some vitamins for me to buy, so I'm gonna put that $100 for this month. Adventures and activities is basically anything that's going out camping or going to the movies or just something adventurous outside of the house for fun. I don't know why I do that separately. I just didn't know what other category to put that into. So let's say 50. I'm not going to go through every single one because I don't want to take this whole video up, but basically these are the rest of my categories. I've got home decor, miscellaneous, subscriptions, gifts, Uber/transit, any travel that I'm doing that month, and my cat if I need to buy her food, for example. So that's all my wants. Those are things that like you don't necessarily have to have every month, but they're things that you want to have. And then your savings. So obviously I have my sinking funds down here. I keep those in a WealthSimple account because WealthSimple actually has a high interest savings and you can take money in and out of it very easily. So I save for like fun times if I want to go to like a concert or traveling. I've just recently started saving for like family purposes. So like for my future, if I want to have kids, and then an emergency fund if anything happens that I need money urgently. So those are sinking funds. And then I also have my investment accounts that I put money into every month. So keeping track of those, I think, are really vital in terms of tracking how much you want to save and your goals for your future. I do not have a pension, so I have to save money all the time. And then down here, I've got any debt. So like if you have to pay off, your credit card or a personal loan. So those are my 4 categories. And then once the month actually starts, basically you go down to this transaction tracker and I put in totals. So, let's say November 1st, I have to pay my mortgage, let's say, because I do it in 2 spurts. So I'll do mortgage and then 200 in utilities. And then on the 15th again, I would pay the mortgage again, and so on and so on. Groceries, any transaction. So at the start of every week, I like to go into my bank account and look at my checking and look at my Visa and pay off, or my Visa, and tally up all of my transactions for the week. And then that way it's very easy to keep track of. So that is like what I do. And then these sections will populate as the month goes on. So you can kind of see like where your money is going, what percentage is going to what. I'm sure if you're into finances like I am, you have heard people say, 50% should be needs, 30% should be wants, and 20% should be savings. Now, I don't know how realistic that is in today's world. I would say my needs are more than 50% of my income. My wants and my savings vary every month, but it is a good marker to keep in mind. And so this tracker will show you in a graph of like what is going where and what is being allocated to those buckets, which I find very helpful. So that's what I do every month for my personal finances. I'm not going to go into my business finances today. I don't think there's enough time, and I don't want to bore you guys, but basically I do a very similar routine with my work finances. Anytime money comes in, I write that down into my budget tracker. Anytime money goes out, I do the same thing, but I typically do it at the end of the month rather than every week, just because I don't have time to do it every week, but it's manageable enough. I can do it at the end of every month. I also have a virtual assistant who will go in and track my credit card statements that will also put my numbers into my budget as well. So I use QuickBooks for my budgeting in my business. I find that really helpful. And then I just have different categories for my business spending, which every business is going to have different categories. So maybe I'll do a different video of how I do my freelancer finances. But this is a breakdown of my monthly budgeting routine. So the next part of this video, if you skipped through, welcome to the second part of the video. But the second part really is creating a better relationship with money. And that's the whole point of the tracking and understanding where your finances are at, because I think it's so easy to get scared of where your money's going or being stressed. The biggest stressors in life, and I'm sure if you've ever been tight for money, you know that it's terrifying. So it's great to cultivate a better relationship with money, which will then in turn help you scale your money or get you to the goals with your finances that you have. I think it's really important to have more of a positive mindset around money. Depending on how you grew up too, like some people grow up with money and so they don't really ever have to think about it. And so when they get older, they're like, oh, where is my money going? Or how should I be investing my money? They just never think about it. Or you're somebody that didn't grow up with a lot of money and so you're always craving more. You're always wondering where the next paycheck's going to come from. I think we all have different relationships with it. But personally, I think like I've always been somebody who has been interested in making a lot of money. I didn't grow up with a lot of money. And so it's something that I'm like, wow, it can provide so much freedom and so much calm in our life. Obviously, I don't believe that like people that have lots of money are happier per se. I think purpose and happiness comes from somewhere different and within inside you and your family and your friendships and your health. But I do believe that money can create a sense of ease in your life. And I do believe it does buy some happiness. And you might not agree with me on that, and that's okay. But I truly believe that money can buy adventures and freedom and travel and things that you love, which does provide some happiness. Like I bought myself a Jeep and I know it's a thing, but it actually does bring me joy. It brings me so much joy. And I'm not afraid to admit that. But I also know if that's the only thing in my life, if I didn't have strong relationships, if I didn't have confidence or loved what I was doing in my life, if I was only living for money, obviously I wouldn't be as happy. So I think it's a little bit of balance, like everything in life. So here are a few tips that I would love to give you guys in terms of creating a better relationship with money. I think the first step is to understand your current relationship with money, maybe journal about it. How do you feel towards money? Does it stress you out? Does it make you angry? Does it make you scared? Does it make you happy? Think about that. Set your financial goals. Where do you want to be in 5 years' time? Maybe you'd want to be debt-free. Maybe you want to buy a house. Maybe you want to rent and not have a mortgage that you have to think of. Like, what are your financial goals? Then you obviously want to cultivate healthy money habits. And that's where, this whole video comes into place of like doing the monthly tracking. And then obviously developing a positive mindset with money is the last point. So those are like the 4 things that I would say are really big in terms of strengthening your relationship with money. So start there. Okay, so the first point being one of the biggest ways to strengthen your relationship with money is to track every dollar in and every dollar that comes out. You don't know what's going on in your finances if you're not tracking things. And it doesn't have to be super intense. It doesn't have to take up a ton of time. Like I said earlier, I do it once a week. It takes like 20 minutes a week. And I literally just go through my account, pay my bills and track things. And then at the like mid-month, I know what I've spent on groceries, or I know what I've spent on coffee, and I can rate it in if I need to. And I can also very clearly see like what's coming in, what's going out, have I gone over, etc., etc. So I think that's a really good way to just get more awareness into your finances. From there, obviously creating a monthly budget. So knowing what's going in and out, and then you can kind of figure out, okay, what can I spend every month? Like if you know I'm only making $4,500 a month, if you're forecasting that, you can say, okay, I can allocate this much to this, I can allocate this much to this. And then as long as it totals up to that 4,500, you're good. And if it's going over, well, then you're going into debt. And then you need to think a little bit more strategically on how you can shift your finances. And then, like I said, the last point is just checking in on this on a weekly basis. I think it's so important to just keep it digestible and manageable and not overwhelm yourself by doing it at the end of the month and you don't know where your money's gone and it's a total mess. So I think there's ways to stay organized. I think that building a relationship with money definitely takes time, and we all come from different backgrounds when it comes to finances. So don't worry if your story looks different than someone else's. I feel like for myself, I personally have always worked really hard to have, funds coming in, but I've had points in my life where I started a candle business and I had to put out all this money in terms of buying products and marketing and supplies. And I'm like, it's tough because then you're like spending 6 months catching up on all the money that you've spent. Or, I moved across the country 4 years ago and left my full-time job. So of course, I had to pay for moving expenses. I had to get a new apartment. I left having a consistent paycheck for almost 2 months. There's definitely things that kind of derail us on our money journey, and that's okay because life is meant to ebb and flow, and obviously experiences sometimes are way more important than just having money coming in. But I think setting goals, setting an awareness around your money, and tracking it is the number one thing that will make a difference in your relationship with money and how your future unfolds. So that is my thoughts on this today. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. If you are interested in this type of content, make sure you subscribe and turn those notifications on. I post videos every week about living the life of a creative entrepreneur, productivity tips, wellness tips as a business owner, and my journeys of building a small business and creating my dream life. So follow along. I thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next week.